The podcast you're listening to is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome back to the Cosmic Library, where you can read about the greatest stories in all of the multiverse. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
We are doing this show in conjunction with Second Union. For more of the latest headlines and entertainment, please go to our website at wearesecondunion.com. The good thing about running a Cosmic Library, you don't have to worry about germs so much out here.
Or overdue fees.
Well, you have to worry about those, but those will cost you more than a couple cents, I promise you that. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty well.
Yeah?
No flu here.
Okay. Jesse, you had a thought and it paused or something. What happened?
No, I was just saying I was doing fine right now.
Okay, I'm not used to positivity coming from the both of you. It's a little bit offsetting.
Well,
I don't. The end of the world.
I don't feel like, voicing out how I'm depressed all the time. So let's just go out. I'm fine.
Okay. I accidentally found a gem. I braved the social warnings. I went out to Santa Clarita Comic and Toy Fest. It's a little one-day thing being held at, the College of the Canyons. It's not too far from Six Flags out here.
Oh, okay.
So I went up there, and as I was walking around, there was a store that actually had a third-party Transformer I've been looking for a while, and he had it for half price.
Which one?
Do you know what Transistor is?
No.
It's made by KFC, which I found out is short for Kevin's Fan Club. It is a masterpiece-sized version of Blaster and Rewind.
Oh.
Yeah, I already have a Masterpiece Soundwave, and I looked at that and just said, well, that'd be nice. And of course, I buy it, get it home, then I take a look at the side of the box and realize I got like this metal version of it, so the whole thing has this weird shiny, glittery sheen on it.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. I'm staring at the box right now just going, huh. Now I feel weird about opening it. But, that is the way it is. I'm still digesting all the news about the coronavirus globally. I'm trying to not figure out how dangerous it is. I'm sure it is fairly dangerous to certain people, but at the same time, I got to figure out how to keep me and mine relatively safe. That's just that's a smart practice. But it is amazing to hear about all the things that have been canceled, postponed, closed. UCLA has moved to online classes for the next month and a half. Princeton has canceled all classes after spring break. I think the colleges out in Riverside in Southern California have canceled, or they're moving to online only for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Coachella, one of the biggest music festivals in the world, has announced its postponement into the fall. That's a 6-month delay.
Wow.
The Stagecoach Music Festival, the biggest country music festival in the world, also postponed. There's actually a couple bits of convention news wired in there I don't want to drop quite yet, but this is really affecting things on a large scale I was not prepared for.
I'm really surprised that all the cancellations are happening, and I feel for all the people whose livelihoods depend on those conventions.
Oh, I agree with you. There's a lot to digest there. So I'm keeping track of things rather carefully. I'm still scheduled to go to WonderCon April 10th through 12th. And nothing... that and San Diego Comic-Con so far are completely unaffected, but they have posted that they're watching things carefully for the time being.
Right.
So I am just really curious how things will shake out. Because I live in Southern California, I'm always curious what's going on at the Disneyland theme park because they own my favorite comic company. And surprisingly, the lines out there, according to the app, have stayed pretty steady. It seems like normal business days out there. So I don't know what it is about Southern California, but people out here are just still doing things as they usually do.
Not spreading the mass hysteria. Now, honestly, we were talking about it before. It is something to be cautious of, but I don't think that mass panic is the answer.
I just don't know how people are responding to it. I get why certain people are buying what they're buying from the stores. However, most of this seems to be bought in the idea that this country will go through a major lockdown or quarantine as other countries have. And
We're not that organized.
No, we're not, unfortunately. Because there's no definitive border checks or anything, people can drive from city to city regardless of quarantine announcements. So it's kind of weird to see people buy all this stuff when, quite frankly, we don't have the same controls other countries have.
Mm-hmm.
So if things get weird, it's just going to get weird.
Yeah.
But, that is a subject for another day. The subject of this week, though, is the Punisher miniseries for the War of the Realms from Marvel Comics in 2019. We will get to that after the news of the week, and we will start with Marvel comic news. We will talk about the characters that are owned by the House of Mouse and where their storylines are going. Well, Spider-Ham is becoming the Pork Knight.
Batman?
That's the weird part. This is part of Peter Porker, The Spectacular Spider-Ham #3 by Zeb Wells and Will Robinson.
Mm-hmm. It's a different fandom and universe.
Yeah, Spider-Ham and Spider-Man have been universe jumping a little bit. And in Peter Porker #3, the two of them have jumped into the gritty universe that their version of Spider-Man reminds them a lot of the Dark Knight from The Dark Knight Returns, the famous Frank Miller comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out this is a man-sized pig man who grits his teeth a lot, jumps past lightning, and is known as the Pork Knight.
I cannot facepalm loud enough.
There's something rather funny about it, though, and it's not funny like screaming, but it is bizarre enough to be interesting for no real discernible reason.
Like the Bugs Bunny crossover, well, the Looney Tunes crossover with the DC world.
Hey, the Elmer Fudd one was good. The others I can do without. But the Pork Knight here, I sent you guys an image so you can take a look. He looks like he could steal your bacon. That's a lot of jaw. He looks like he's been crossed with Jay Leno somewhere.
I'm still having a hard time being actually terrified.
I don't know about terrified. Well, okay. If I saw that in real life coming at me, yeah, I'd be pretty scared, because I can't explain that. Not in the least. But viewing it as an observer, it's kind of funny. They even managed to copy the famous Dark Knight lightning jump image from Frank Miller's covers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Still weird, though, when the companies allude to each other at all. It always feels like it's not really respectful. It's always more of an in-joke.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, speaking of in-jokes, Hawkeye may have just realized that Daredevil is blind. Okay, so let me back up.
He's got sharp eyes, except his powers of observation suck.
Okay, so in the latest Daredevil comics with Chip Zdarsky, we know that Matt Murdock, he accidentally killed a thug in the middle of a liquor store robbery. Mm-hmm. And he was convinced that he didn't deserve to be Daredevil, so he took off the costume. But of course, Matt Murdock being who he is, after some training, he's trying to feel comfortable doing what he thinks he ought to be doing. He's been running around in a black outfit with a black bandana on the top half of his face, very similar to his Year One look, or as a lot of casual fans would recognize from the first and third season of the Daredevil series from Netflix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Mm-hmm. So in Hawkeye Freefall, Hawkeye has been using a time device, so he's been both himself and Ronin in this miniseries so far. And he had a run-in with whom he recognizes as Daredevil in this very bizarre black outfit. So as he's talking to Daredevil, he realizes that Daredevil's, not only are his eyes covered, but his face isn't moving as he's talking to him. Hawkeye's telling him, yeah, Falcon, Bucky, are you feeling okay, Daredevil? And that's when he thinks to himself, holy crap, can he not see out of that mask? What? Can he never see? Is he friggin' blind? And Hawkeye, as Daredevil's talking to him, there are these trying times for all of us, Hawkeye, days like today. And as he's doing this, Hawkeye is waving his hand back and forth in front of his own face, like this John Cena, you can't see me type thing, until Daredevil reaches out, grabs him by the wrist, and says, why are you doing that? Oh, I'm sorry. Nope, he's not blind. I sent you guys the panel so you could see it, but yes, Hawkeye may have just realized Daredevil cannot see traditionally. It's amazing what secrets people can manage to keep from each other, isn't it?
Yeah.
I especially like that first panel where it looks like it slowly dawns on Clint Barton that, wait, can he see through that?
Again, he's got great vision. His powers of perception are horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, but it turns out that even though Murdock is getting back into the Daredevil costume, he put on a hood that somebody else was wearing but was killed in issue number 19 by Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cicchetto, his problems may only be just starting. A group of mercenaries have been turned loose in Hell's Kitchen, including Bullseye and the Rhino and Crossbow.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, it's worse than you think. Also in this quartet is Bullet, a mercenary I'm not terribly familiar with, and Crossbones has actually stopped doing work for the Red Skull long enough to be a part of this chaos causing in New York.
Oh, great.
It's a very dangerous quartet. But people from all over Hell's Kitchen are starting to put on like their own Daredevil masks and going out to meet them. Even though Daredevil hasn't been seen, apparently the influence of, the Man Without Fear has long been felt in Hell's Kitchen, and people are stepping up to fill the gap.
Well, that's good and bad.
Dangerous.
Because
It is. Like I said, one of the men who did this was already killed, and Murdock was putting on his mask. Murdock is not going to sit in the sidelines anymore. Here's where it gets bad, though. You think that was bad? That's not that bad. A while ago, we read the first volume of Daredevil, and you saw Murdock kept going to a Catholic nun for advice, a lady named Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
She seemed to have his trust, although I can never figure out what exactly their relationship is, and it may be more casual than I think. Matt Murdock is devoutly Catholic. This is a woman of God speaking to him. It was probably some of the best counsel he could get, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Elizabeth, she was trying to herald people into this church as the mercenaries are attacking Hell's Kitchen. And the Rhino saw her pull people in.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and the Rhino said that churches have always been off limits when it comes to supervillainy. I mean, nobody wants to take the chance.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not entirely a supervillain. He's semi-reformed. So he's going to give him 10 minutes to get out of that church.
Yikes.
That's generous.
You'd think, but I mean, he's still getting ready to slam a church. Either way, Elizabeth was shaking. She slammed the door shut, bolted it, walked over to the candle processions, and she grabbed one of the wick burners and was shaking as she was trying to move it over to another candle. And the priest walked over and kept asking her, "What's going on? What's the problem? What's going on?" And she stammered out that they had 10 minutes to leave, according to the large man. And the priest said, "So, Sister Elizabeth, what do we do?" And that's when her voice changed, and she said, "You can't call me that. I'm not Elizabeth." Suddenly, all the other candles that were unlit flared to life. She took off the top of her habit, turned to the man, and said, "You can call me Mary." I'm gathering from the silence you don't know what that means.
I got thoughts rolling through my head. I'm not entirely sure what is accurate.
Okay, so Mary is Mary Walker. Mary Walker is the real-life name of a notable schizophrenic and pyrokinetic known as Typhoid Mary.
Okay, that makes... Okay.
That was who I was thinking about.
One of her personalities has been Matt Murdock's ex-girlfriend. Another one of her personalities is completely dissociated. She was she has strong fighting skills and the ability to just create flames with her mind. She has at least 4 different known personalities. She hasn't been around for quite a while, though, at least not on a regular basis. She's been seen here or there. Last time I knew of her in a major appearance was when she was working for the Weapon X program.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly back then they managed to cure her of her multiple personality disorder, but obviously it wasn't as permanent as people would like.
Of course.
And I'm trying to decide how good or bad this is. If she feels a connection to this church, she may be capable of keeping the Rhino out. Goodness knows characters like Daredevil and Spider-Man have fought the Rhino before.
Mm-hmm.
If she feels no connection to this church, somebody just lit a stick of dynamite in the middle of it.
Oh, boy.
So it's a gamble.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no guarantee based on that smile she's giving which way she's feeling at this moment. Of course, this happens to be the last page cliffhanger in this issue. So, I don't know what to think, but it's going to be rough. Whether it's for the church or for Rhino, I don't know, but it's going to be rough. Sorry?
Just agreeing.
Okay. Further on in Marvel comic news, there's actually a little bit of information about the Children of the Atom series that was contained in an entirely different one-shot. Marvel Voices #1 came out in February from Vita Ayala, Bernard Chang, Marco Maiolo. And it was a one-shot that was supposed to celebrate minority characters and writers and creators in Marvel Comics. Well, in that issue, Forge is greeting a group of people who say that they are the biggest fans of his in particular. He had a race of some sort with Shuri from Wakanda, which I'm sure was more technological than it was a literal foot race.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that are unaware, Forge is a mutant with the ability to physically create or invent, air quotes, invent any device he decides to invent.
Uh-huh.
The thing is, as he was greeted by a group of kids who looked frighteningly familiar in the last panel of this particular story. I sent it so you can take a look, but you see the 5 kids down front, right? Yeah, they're proclaiming themselves his biggest fans.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
They look familiar to you at all?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, just for reference, I'm adding an image for you guys of the Children of the Atom. And this actually explains a couple things I have had on my mind for a little while when it comes to this series. They've long been described as the first actual X-Men fans. You know, they're going to be sidekicks eventually, but they're self-professed fans of the X-Men. Nobody's ever specified that these kids were mutants.
Ah.
And it always seems odd to me that these group of 5 kids have powers that so, not completely, but at least very thoroughly mimic the powers of 5 known X-Men. There's always a level of overlap, but this much is just disturbing.
Right.
So, if they have a friend in Forge, that's one person who could create the technology necessary for them to mimic mutant abilities.
Yep.
Hmm.
And I've long contended that, for the most part, the Children of the Atom, there's something about them that's disturbingly artificial. It's more profound in the 3 in the center there, the ones that are mimicking Cyclops, Archangel, and Nightcrawler.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really starting to think that these kids have no inborn powers of their own, like, period. If you guys disagree, please let me know, because I could be way off base here.
No, it's a good
No.
theory. I like that theory.
I totally agree with you. Again, with Forge could do exactly that.
Totally plausible.
Well, we'll find out pretty soon. Children of the Atom is scheduled to come out in April. It's amazing how time is just jumping by, isn't it? I mean, we should be on the eve of the Outlawed one-shot. So we're going to find out a lot of information fairly soon. But last up in Marvel comic news, it turns out a fan-favorite character may be getting reintroduced to one of the X-Men lineups.
Reintroduced or rebooted?
Reintroduced. I know, you want me to explain. I will.
Sure.
That sounds threatening. So
I'm pleading the fifth.
Okay. So X-Force right now is being done by Benjamin Percy and Joshua Cassara. Cassara is the artist. And Cassari posted an image to Twitter with a caption that reads, quote, "Have a good Saturday, folks, especially you comic peeps who are working through the whole weekend," unquote. Now, Benjamin Percy, the writer, retweeted it, and he added the caption, quote, "Coming soon in X-Force 9, unquote. Which made it even more curious, because the image that he posted, and I'm sending it to you right now, is of a character we haven't seen since the dawn of X. Gabby Kinney.
Oh, Honey Badger.
Yep, also known as Honey Badger and or Scout, depending on what timeline or what part of the comics you're talking about here. And it's true, she really hasn't been seen in any capacity since Dawn of X started.
I'm glad she's back. I missed her. She's adorable.
I don't mind that she's back, I really don't. However, given her age, I would much rather not see her on X-Force. I would love to see her as a New Mutant.
True.
Yeah.
You know, her trying to keep pace with Wolfsbane, Magic, and Mirage would be farkin' hilarious to me.
Yep.
Again, I would not dismiss her, and I'm not saying she's in the wrong place. It's just there are other characters I'd like to see her actually spend time with. Actually, now that I think about it, I'd like to see her spend time with the Stepford Cuckoos now that there's 5 of them again.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't think it'd be hate-filled. I think she'd really enjoy it, but I mean, their demeanor is so different than hers. And they come from technically the same kind of origins.
It'd be a strange odd couple series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have DC Comic News. This is where we talk about the other major company in comics and what they have coming now and in the near future. The Sandman is getting a new lease on life. The Sandman series in DC Comics is ending, if it hasn't already. But Neil Gaiman, the creator of the Sandman, is actually narrating an audible original audio drama based on the Sandman series. According to Gaiman himself in a statement, quote, "Almost 30 years ago, Dirk Maggs approached DC about adapting the Sandman into audio form. It didn't happen, although it was how Dirk and I first crossed paths. And I'm glad it didn't happen, because we're in a golden age of audio drama right now, and Dirk and I are much better at what we're doing. This is a rich audio adaptation of the Sandman graphic novels, brilliantly crafted by Dirk Maggs, with an all-star cast. I can't wait until the world hears what we've done," unquote. The Sandman audio adaptations will be available on the Audible service this summer in English before being released in French, German, Italian, and Spanish. I'm trying to decide if that's the kind of jump-in point I need for the Sandman.
Maybe?
There's something really endearing about the idea of the creator of the series being the narrator and other people playing the roles in this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, almost like the guy's telling you the story himself. There's something really personal and very cool about that. I'll have to decide. The Sandman's always been weirdly surrealistic for me. It's been hard for me to get into, but that could change my mind.
Mm-hmm.
In news, Joanna is going to strangle me over.
Oh boy.
Jeff
I can't
Johns
wait.
Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok's Batman the Three Jokers finally has a release date. This is a miniseries that's been teased for about a year now, actually. The first issue of this miniseries is going to arrive June 17th. According to DC Comics, in a statement, quote, "After years of anticipation, the epic story is finally here. Find out why there are 3 Jokers, and what that means for the decades-long battle between the Dark Knight and the Clown Prince of Crime. In this powerful, emotional story, Batman, Batgirl, and Red Hood, all past victims of the Joker, work together to solve a mystery unlike anything they've ever faced before," unquote. The seeds for this story were first planted 4 years ago in Justice League number 42 from June of 2015.
Mm.
Now, for those that aren't aware, in that storyline, I believe it was Bruce Wayne was injured and was using the Metreon chair. No, he wasn't injured, but he had managed to obtain the Metreon chair, this chair that, if the person survives sitting in it, can supply somebody with all the knowledge in the universe. And for some reason, Bruce Wayne decided to ask the chair about the Joker, and that's when it was revealed to him that the Joker is not one individual, it's 3. 3 different people over the years have had the moniker of the Joker. There's something very interesting about that, because it could explain why the Joker has gone through such radical style shifts over the years.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is it kind of takes away a lot of the personal aspect that's been built up over the decades, too. If it's this weird line of individuals that's been going up against Batman instead of one insane one.
That would make a lot of sense, and it would explain kind of why he had those shifts, those really radical shifts. They weren't psychotic breaks, they were just other characters.
It just, like I said, it feels like it takes away some of the personal rivalry between the two, if it's been a small group of people that's been up against him instead of one. Also makes me ask...
It's still the Joker.
That also throws a bit of a wrench into the whole thing with Harley Quinn. I mean, she's supposedly been the paramour of this singular character. Now you have to ask yourselves, wait, which one?
Maybe that was part of her psychosis.
I don't know, but I mean, if she started in the 90s and that was a different one than the current era, does that mean she fell in love with one and then followed another?
She's crazy. It could happen. I don't know. I don't have these answers. I don't work for DC.
Yeah, these are the type of tough questions that make it very hard for editorial.
Mm.
The artist of the 3 Jokers, Jason Fabok, he was speaking to Entertainment Weekly, and he made an unusual promise. He said, quote, "I see fans on Twitter, and I know they're getting impatient. They want this book to come out. Jeff and I have come to realize that everything will happen within its time. Because it's taken so long, we've actually made this story better. Everything's come together so naturally. We're so pumped up and confident in this story, unquote. Fabok went on to promise that because of the delays and how long it's taken them to put together, there will be no delays in this series. He understands it's still a bit of a sore subject from Doomsday Clock and a few other things that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have curiosities, if only because maybe this answers a couple of long-standing issues about the character. However, I still hope it doesn't include an actual origin. I just don't want to know where he comes from. I know, that's a unique thing to me, but I just don't want to know.
To each their own.
Yeah. However, that doesn't affect the current storylines going on. Because we know that James Tynion IV took over the regular Batman series from Tom King.
Mm-hmm.
And he's teased big things for the Joker versus the Batman in the Joker War story arc. However, he's also begun to hint about something new that's coming. We know that right now that Batman is dealing with the machinations of some kind of new character called the Designer, and the Joker's been pushing his own separate and deadly agenda. As a matter of fact, meeting the Joker is what caused the Designer to go overboard and originally scrap his first plan for Gotham. But according to Tynion, the second issue of the Joker War story is going to feature a brand new character, or at least debut one, called the Clown Hunter. There is no imagery to go with this, and there isn't any explanation, although with a name like Clown Hunter in DC Comics, it's pretty obvious what he's influenced by and what he wants to do. However, I have major questions about this, and I'm not sure I want the answers on this particular one. Clown Hunter sounds like a psychotic day at his three-ring circus.
Sounds it needs more imagination for their names.
I don't know. There's something... It's almost like a terror of terrors with a name like Clown Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
However, I wonder if he's focused. Is he focused specifically on the Joker, or does that mean anyone that's ever remotely dressed like a clown, like, say, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, or Punchline, or Harley Quinn, or somehow in his crosshairs, too?
Mm-hmm.
So the prelude to Joker War starts in April's Batman number 93, and if this is supposed to be a couple issues deep, that means Clown Hunter will appear in approximately Batman 96. I'm on the fence.
Me too.
Another character I'm still trying to make a decision about is Punchline, the new lieutenant to the Joker's henchman. She still hasn't had a whole lot revealed about her potential backstory, or what even her general motivations are outside of serving the Joker. However, the co-creator of Punchline has actually had to debunk a recent interesting theory regarding Punchline's origins.
What did he debunk?
James Tynion IV referred to Punchline in... James Tynion IV's script had the Joker refer to Punchline as not a nice guy. That caused online speculators who believed that Punchline was actually a transgender version of another character named Matthew, who debuted way back in Batman number 38 in 2018. Now, James Tynion IV has taken on this whole thing, and he put out in a tweet, quote, "I've seen this floating around with zero idea where it started. Punchline has no connection to Batman number 38 or the characters introduced there, and did not appear in any comic before Batman number 89, unquote." I don't know where the connection... back up. Matthew Warner was a boy who was obsessed with Bruce Wayne to the point of having his own parents killed. That's where he appeared in Batman number 38. And because Joker referred to Punchline as not a nice guy, some people just drew the lines and assumed that because Matthew has his tragic origin connected to Bruce Wayne / Batman, that they must have become Punchline. The thing that Tynion kind of pointed out outside of the tweet, though, is that Matthew Warner was a boy in Batman number 38, which debuted 2 years ago. Matthew Warner would have had to not only have his gender completely changed in 2 years, but he also would have had to grow up about 8-9 years.
Yeah, I don't think that's possible.
Shouldn't be. And the sad part is, Tynion has just laid it out there very flatly that the two are not connected. However, you know the internet. This rumor is going to persist.
I just want to know how they drew that conclusion.
I can't say for sure. I wasn't there. I wasn't involved in this. I didn't even know this was a quasi-controversy until the story popped up yesterday.
I wasn't aware of it
Yeah.
until you just said it like 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, and the only reason I don't like talking about rumors, but I wanted to put this out there because the creator of the character very firmly debunked it. So there shouldn't be any real speculation as to this aspect of Punchline's origin. It is a flat no.
Mm-hmm.
So the origin is still TBD, and I'm sure Tynion has an idea as to what he wants to do. However, when we are talking about women in DC Comics, it's almost inevitable that you have to talk about Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring her up because in June, she's getting a new creative team.
Yay!
According to an official press release by DC Comics, the new writer of Wonder Woman will be Mariko Tamaki, and art will be done by Mikkel Janin. That's actually a really good creative team. I want to see how they gel. Mariko Tamaki is the person who did the some of the all-new Wolverine comics when Laura Kinney was Wolverine, as well as the X-23 volumes that came afterwards. And Mikkel Janin is an artist who was working for a long time with Tom King on the Batman series. So they did not pull fly-by-night creators for this volume of Wonder Woman. They will begin their work together, or I'm sorry, their first published work together will be Wonder Woman number 759, coming out June 10th. The first issue in Tamaki's run will actually feature a cover by David Marquez and a cardstock variant cover by Jim Lee and Scott Williams. According to the statement, quote, "In this new story arc, Diana starts to pick up the pieces of her life following her battle with the Four Horsewomen. Man's world has become more complicated to navigate than ever before. A familiar threat is watching Diana's every move, and now's the perfect time to strike," unquote.
Is it Ares again?
Well, according to the statement, in Wonder Woman number 760, features a return of longtime Machiavellian DC villain Maxwell Lord.
Oh, him. Okay.
Yeah. And Max is going to represent the worst that humanity has to offer, but he's come to Diana's doorstep looking for help. I'd like to say that's cool, but I've seen a lot of stories where Weasley villains show up looking for help, get the help they need, and then immediately turn Weasley again.
Stab the hero in the back.
Yep.
Like they do.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of funny you mentioned that, because we have a little bit of information as to an upcoming volume of Superman. Action Comics number 24 will be written by Brian Michael Bendis, with art and cover by John Romita Jr., and this is going to continue the fallout of Clark Kent's reveal to the world that he and Superman are the same person. And believe it or not,
shocked.
Well, this issue actually has something that's going to be a little bit of a point of contention, because this will be Clark Kent's first reporting gig since he outed himself to the world.
Oh. Okay.
Right?
That adds a little bit of weight to the story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, I wonder what it's going to be like answering questions to the man who could, snap your neck if he thinks you're lying. You think that would change the answers at all?
A lot, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or listening to your heartbeat, like a lie detector test.
God, I can only imagine what it's like. Hi, I'd like to ask you about the Little League tryouts. We didn't do anything!
I play the fifth. I stole the Lindbergh baby.
It turns out that his wife may have it just as rough. In Superman Villains number 1 by Brian Michael Bendis and Matt Fraction, Greg Rucka, Jody Hauser, Steve Lieber, Mike Perkins, Brian Hitch, and Eduardo Pancia, Lois Lane may have just destroyed the Daily Planet. This requires a little bit of an explanation. Do you remember the year of the villain stuff when Lex Luthor, with his Apex Lex powers, was wandering around handing gifts to different people?
Not really.
Some supervillains got upgrades, other people got strange bits of information.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Well, Lex actually had one of those gifts for Lois Lane. And the information was about the new owner of the Daily Planet, Marisol León. Marisol, it turns out, not only did she own the Daily Planet, but she was also the head of something that's popped up called the Invisible Mafia, a huge crime gang that is responsible for pretty much the flow of illegal activities in and around Metropolis. And this was something that Lois and Superman were unaware of until they received this gift. Now, they've been sitting on this information for a while, not sure what to do with it, because it could hurt a lot of people they care about. As well as one of the more venerable institutions in all of DC Comics, the Daily Planet itself. But in Superman Villains #1, Lois Lane decided to release the information.
Oof.
So, the Daily Planet right now is under I guess you could say, a social siege. The Daily Planet isn't gone, but it's certainly going to be under a tremendous amount of strain for a little while.
I can only imagine there's going to be some massive fallout, and that's going to leave Lois Lane without a job.
Yeah, but considering Lois Lane is now involved in the new version of Checkmate, I'd say that she's gotten an upgrade. I mean, I will sit here and say, I'm not a Superman fan. I'm not generally a Lois Lane fan, but so many people have talked about Lois Lane as one of the best female characters in comics, even though her role is almost entirely support and object of desire of Superman, or of DC's most powerful hero.
And damsel in distress.
Right, and if she evolves into not a spy master, but maybe an intel specialist in DC, I'm all for it. Goodness knows she has the credentials long-term to tell this story.
Yeah.
So, we'll see what happens. Last up in DC Comics, the reboot of one of my favorite comic series of the 90s, unfortunately, has been canceled. Warren Ellis and Ramon Villalobos have been working on a Wildcats miniseries spinning out of the Wildstorm maxi series that came out a couple of years ago. And, unfortunately, it appears there's some kind of creator fallout. Warren Ellis put in a recent post that Ramon Villalobos, quote, didn't want to draw it after all, unquote. And attempts to find a replacement artist for the series did not go well. Villalobos himself tweeted, quote, let me say at the time that I was told this project was not canceled. I was late. I acknowledge that here. I was depressed and trying to put everything into making it as good as I can. Trust me, I paid a price for that. To say I didn't want to draw it is definitely not what I relayed to my editors, Warren, or anyone else. What I got to do on it was some of the proudest work I've ever done. It just took far too long. I'm still unsure of the status, though. This gives me some clarity, I suppose. Unquote. So, the series was originally posted as delayed for resolicitation, but now it's evidently officially canceled. I'm a little sad about that. The reimagining of the Wildstorm universe that Ellis did was amazing. He turned the whole thing upside down and modernized it really well. Who knows? Maybe they'll put out a different version of this at a later time.
Never know.
Can hope. Last up is our general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. And unfortunately, I have to start off with 2 creator deaths in the past week. First up, we lost comic book creator and art director Frank McLaughlin. He worked a lot with DC Comics, Marvel Comics, and Charlton Comics. He passed away for undisclosed reasons at the age of 84 in Connecticut last week. McLaughlin worked for a lot of comic book companies. He started as an anchor with Charlton Comics in the early 1960s with Dick Giordano. Inking was not publicly credited at the time, so his name didn't end up on a lot of comics. His first confirmed comic works was a 5-page short story in 1962's Reptosaurus No. 8, which he both penciled and inked. He eventually became Charlton's art director in 1962, working on Captain Atom and Blue Beetle. He actually revitalized the Blue Beetle for Silver Age audiences in 1964 after Charlton got the license from Fox Feature Syndicate. And then McLaughlin, with writer Joe Gill, created the martial arts superhero known as Judo Master in 1965. He went from drawing his own ongoing practice of the Japanese martial arts style, and he became the series writer eventually. McLaughlin also worked as an anchor for both DC and Marvel Comics, including work on Captain America, The Flash, and Justice League of America before he retired in 1996. After that, McLaughlin became a teacher at private art schools throughout Connecticut while co-authoring comic art style books with Mike Gold. He's survived by 2 children, Aaron and Terry. The co-creator of Judo Master. Man. Not a comic book character a lot of casual fans will know, but geez, I remember that one popping up several times in DC Comics.
Mm.
Also passed away, Alan Bellman. He was 95 years old.
Wow.
His death was announced just yesterday on March 9th. He was supposed to be living in South Florida. Bellman was a staff artist at Timely and Atlas Comics in the 1940s, before Marvel was established. Timely was Marvel's progenitor. Some of the titles that Bellman worked on: The Young Allies, The Patriot, The Human Torch, The Destroyer, All Winners Comics, and Marvel Mystery. Bellman is almost infamously private. He very rarely spoke about his private life at all. He said in a statement, or he said in a bio on his own website, quote, "I was born in Manhattan and studied at the High School of Industrial Arts. I eventually became a staff artist at Timely during the golden age of comics. While still a teenager, I did backgrounds for Sid Shore's Captain America in 1942, and eventually worked on such titles as The Patriot, The Destroyer, The Human Torch, Jap Buster Johnson, and Jet Dixon and the Space Squadron, All Winners Comics, Marvel Mystery, Submariner Comics, Young Allies, and so much more," unquote. Bellman actually worked hand-in-hand with Stan Lee on several books. Bellman spent his later years working the convention circuit and making appearances at comic-related events. I actually met him once or twice. It's kind of amazing. 95 years old. He worked on comic books that most people nowadays wouldn't understand. It's like, when he mentions the Human Torch, I wonder how many people understand. We're not talking Johnny Storm. So, and it's just sad to hear stuff like that happen.
Yeah.
Speaking of sad to hear happen, the coronavirus is starting to affect the convention circuit. Emerald City Comic Con was supposed to take place last weekend. It has been postponed from March until the summer of 2020 due to concerns over the coronavirus outbreak. Emerald City Comic Con is the biggest comic convention in the Seattle area. And Washington State in America has been a hotbed of coronavirus activity, unfortunately. According to a statement by ECC's organizer, Reed Pop, quote, "We have been closely monitoring the situation around the COVID-19 virus in Seattle, and, after many hours of conversation internally and with consultation with local government officials and the Tourism Bureau, we've decided to move next week's Emerald City Comic Con to summer 2020 with a date and detail announcement forthcoming. We did everything that we could to run the event as planned, but ultimately we are following the guidance of the local public health officials indicating that conventions should now be postponed," unquote. This follows both DC Comics and Dark Horse Comics announcing they were pulling out of the convention and most of their appearances in March due to coronavirus concerns. I'm sorry, my mistake. It was supposed to happen this weekend, March 12th through 15th in Seattle. There's currently speculation that it will be postponed until approximately June. However, news is not all bad for people that were planning to go to Emerald City Comic Con. Repop is currently offering full fan ticket refunds for Emerald City Comic Con.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
It is. I mean, they could just say, show up in June, even though it's not always easy for people to get the same days off.
Right.
But they do plan to have the show go on. They just won't begrudge people the chance to get their money back.
Well, that's big of them.
Yeah. However, another convention has been entirely canceled due to coronavirus. The South by Southwest tournament out in Texas.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
This has been The South by Southwest Festival is a large cultural and pop culture convention. Marvel Comics often has panels there. I haven't heard of DC doing so. There's sometimes anime releases, J-rock concerts. It tends to be an interesting cross-section of art and culture at South by Southwest.
Yep.
So for the first time in 34 years, South by Southwest is canceled, but the news is actually worse than you think. It's been discovered that the insurance for the South by Southwest Festival will not cover the cancellation.
Oh.
I read some of this article.
Yeah, unfortunately, viral outbreaks are not covered by their insurance. So for right now, the costs of the cancellation are entirely on the shoulders of the organizers of South by Southwest.
Yikes.
That includes venue cancellation, food contract cancellations, possibly returning vendor money at this point.
Wow.
Founders Nick Barbaro and Roland Swenson or Swenson himself said in a statement, quote, "We have a lot of insurance: terrorism, injury, property destruction, weather. Unfortunately, bacterial infections, communicable diseases, viruses, and pandemics are not covered," unquote.
Go figure.
Yeah. This cancellation affects a lot of the city of Austin. South by Southwest usually attracts about 100,000 visitors to the city and brings roughly $350 million to the local economies.
Mm-hmm.
So this is very, very problematic. One convention that thus far is unaffected by the COVID-19 outbreak is San Diego Comic-Con. They are still scheduled to go forth this upcoming year, July 22nd through 26th in San Diego, California. And they've announced the 5th waves of spotlight guests for the convention. These are people that will receive an hour-long panel specifically on their careers, as well as be involved in things happening up and down the convention during the weekend. We have the writer and artist on Nightlights and Hicotea, Lorena Alvarez Gomez. The writer of Alatso and Strangelands, Darcy Little Badger. The writer of Fantastic Four and Iron Man 2020, Dan Slott. The artist and co-creator of Stumptown, Matthew Southworth. The artist who's worked on Batman, Daredevil, and Gambit, Lee Weeks. And the artist of Breathtaker and Frankenstein Mobster, Mark Wheatley.
Frankenstein Mobster.
That's the name of it. I don't know anything about that personally.
That's a fun wordplay.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
According to Comic-Con International, they're going to announce 6 additional guests this coming Monday, March 23rd. So more announcements are to be coming. In addition, Boom Studios has announced some of what they're working for as exclusives for WonderCon, which is happening this April 10th through 12th still in Anaheim, California. This includes a Faithless 2 #1 WonderCon exclusive variant in black and white with a red bloody heart drawn around the main characters. They're also holding a panel called Boom Studios Discover Yours. They're calling it their first look for exclusive news previews about some of 2020's news comics, and a panel that includes Brian Azzarello, Carly Usdin, Noah Hayes, Ryan Perot, Sina Grace, Nicole Adelfinger, and Matt Gagnon. Signings going on during the weekend as well at their booth number 1209 during WonderCon include Jack Guzman, Cameron Yabo, Ciara Hanna, Brian Mejia, Davy Santos, William Schufelt, Brian Azzarello, Ryan Perot, Sina Grace, Carly Usdin, Noah Hayes, Blake Foster, and Michael Capone. Joanna, I'm surprised you didn't strangle me for half those names.
Why would I do that?
Jack Guzman was part of Power Rangers Wild Force.
Yeah, I know. I've met him.
Okay. Cameron Yabo from Power Rangers Super Mega Force, and Ciara Hanna from Super Mega Force as well.
I don't know the Super Mega Force as well.
Brennan Mejia from Power Rangers Dino Charge.
Oh, yeah. Know him.
Claire Blackwielder and Davy Santos, also from Dino Charge.
I was kind of like nodding as you're saying these. I've been dragged to meet most of these at Power Morphicon.
Okay, William Schrufelt and Caleb Bendit, both from Ninja Steel. Mm. And Blake Foster from Power Rangers Turbo, and Michael Copon from Power Rangers Time Force.
Fun times.
A lot of peoples.
Yep.
Speaking of Power Rangers, would you like to see what it looks like when a turtle turns into a Power Ranger?
Sure,
Yes.
why not? Just for the heck of it.
There's a preview that was released online for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #4 that includes a specific page when 4 turtles and 1 young girl grab their morphers and transform. And it's amazing. It's almost hilarious that out of all of them, April looks exactly like any other pink Power Ranger has that has used that morpher. Meanwhile, the turtles look radically different.
You know, that's not the train wreck that I was expecting.
True enough. But there they are.
Yeah, she looks just like Kimberly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Meh.
And
Yeah, that is amazing. Donatello with a mastodon, Leonardo with the Triceratops. Saber-Tooth Tiger went to Michelangelo, and Raphael as the Tyrannosaurus.
Tyrannosaurus, yeah. I mean, I think that those matchups are kind of fitting, honestly.
yeah.
In general. The only difference is the turtle's brain didn't go with Didn't go with the blue. He went with hip hop keto. Hey, it's true.
You're never going to let that die, are you?
Why would I?
Because some things have an expiration date, and that one hit it, like, in the 90s.
Says you. That thing is infernal. It is going to burn in my brain forever.
Fight me.
Gladly. Mastodon! No. There is also a Legend of Korra adaptation known as Ruins of the Empire #3 by Michael Dante DiMartino, Michelle Wong, Killian Ng, Adele Matera, and Adriana Maher. It's currently available. It actually adds a little bit of backstory to one of the villains of the Legend of Korra series, Kuvira.
Ooh.
Kuvira, her background in the animated series was always kind of light. You never really understood a lot about her personal motivations. However, in the series, it was revealed that her parents didn't exactly just abandon her one day. They gave her up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
Well, it's because something that was unexplored in the animated series is why exactly they gave her up. How did Kuvira end up with the Beifong family? And as it turns out, Kuvira, when she was a young child, she was still learning her metal bending abilities. And she had a tantrum that nearly killed her mother.
Yikes.
Yeah. Which caused Kuvira's parents to leave her with the Beifong family. Not necessarily because they were on some kind of gallivanting trip, but because they may have been actually afraid for their lives.
Yeah, kind of like Jean Grey's parents were and Rogue's parents were, or adopted parents.
Adopted parents, maybe. I mean, Jean Grey's parents... Jean Grey's parents, I've always suspected that Xavier got into their minds and had her parents release her. You know, but then again, the way it was originally written, sure, Xavier was a saint in the 60s. Then we found out in the 90s, he's a bit of a butt.
A bit? That's an understatement.
I'm purposefully leaving it as an understatement. I don't want to get into a semantics war here.
I will die on this hill.
But I'm always interested to know the motivations of characters, how they end up as they did, and this is just part of the picture. I mean, abandonment issues could be a bit of why Kuvira was always so protective over the Earth Kingdom in general once she fell into a life of civil service. So, there's got to be more to it, though. I mean, why did she go from fearsome protector to dictator? There's more that needs to be revealed here.
Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to the dark side.
I don't like it when you quote I Ching to me. But there's a creator right now who may have put his foot deep into his own mouth. And I mean like tasting his own knee deep.
Ew.
The creator of Earthworm Jim is a man named Doug Tennappel. And he's decent friends with Sean Gordon Murphy, the guy who's been doing the White Knight adaptations of Batman for DC's Black Label.
Please don't tell me there's a crossover.
A little bit, and let me explain. Murphy agreed to do a special cover for Tennappel's comic book called Bigfoot Bill 2, Finger of Poseidon. Okay? Recently, Tennappel has said some ugly things about the LGBTQ community. And not long after he did that, Sean Murphy withdrew his offer to do a cover for Bigfoot Bill 2. And Tennappel went on a tirade on Twitter. He put down a series of tweets, the first of which said, quote, "The LGBTQ put pressure on DC and Murphy for doing a cover on Bigfoot Bill 2. Sean and I agree that he should pull the cover. It's more important than ever that pro-family comic lovers support my work and rethink DC for attacking my business over my beliefs," unquote. Then he put on another tweet later when he thinks he found new information. It says, quote, "This has nothing to do with the book. It's Jim Lee/DC that don't want Murphy to do a favor for a friend that goes against their SJW/LGBTQ brand. This isn't a fake culture war to get on super chats. This is a real culture war. I don't blame Sean. I offered that he could pull the cover. It's hard to be a guy who makes friends to choose either do a cover or do a multi-million-dollar label at DC. Bigfoot Bill 2 is going to be fine, but DC came after my business, so I'm not going to be quiet about it," unquote. Then he put out a different tweet that suddenly got personal. Quote, Jim Lee has his job to do, and I have mine. He's doing a lot better than me, so I can see why he put his giant jackboot on my tiny business, unquote. Now, this is where things get interesting, because Lee apparently saw this tweet, and he responded. And Lee's tweet said, quote, "With all due respect, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, Doug," unquote.
I think that explains it all.
So Ten Napel asked Lee directly via tweet, quote, "Did you talk to Murphy about a tweet of mine?" unquote. Lee responded saying, quote, "Sorry, I did not," unquote. So...
Wait, are we still in high school or did I time travel?
I know. I seriously know. So Ten Napel actually continued his thought process with another tweet made in response to a different user, quote, "It would only be torturous interference if he threatened the Murphyverse deal. I only know from Sean that Lee called him on Wednesday about doing the Bigfoot Bill 2 cover, and it was the same day that leftist LGBTQs came after me on Twitter. They know where to put the pressure," unquote. I'm starting to feel like someone has a very big victim mentality.
You think?
But a few hours after that last tweet, Ten Napel issued another tweet. And it said, quote, "I owe Jim Lee a public apology. Got off the phone with Sean and clarified that he did not bring up my Bigfoot Bill 2 cover. They were talking about other pressures from SJWs. I'm getting to work today on a new cover. Just need to clear Jim's name first," unquote.
Okay, at least he apologized?
He did, but only after he personally went after the publisher-in-chief of DC Comics and also claimed that DC itself was responsible for pulling an artist who technically has the right to do indie work if he feels like it.
Yeah, that's too much backpedaling too little too late.
More or less, yeah. Yeah.
Like, you can't go for the jugular and say, haha, just kidding, I was just going to hit your arm.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
I mean, I'm glad to know a few things. First of all, I'm glad to know what kind of person Ten Napel is, because that means I really don't need to read his comics. I mean, everybody can have their own viewpoints, but he's spending so much time, like, personally attacking people that it's just not worth it. He's a drama queen.
Yeah, let's just grow up, shall we?
Yeah. I mean, for crying out loud, not everything is just instantly people attacking you on Twitter. Some people are allowed to actually make choices based on what you say.
Somebody's a snowflake.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you about two characters who are not snowflakes that are about to meet each other for the first time.
Who?
There's going to be a new crossover event at Image Comics this summer called Kick-Ass versus Hit Girl.
Ooh. Are you serious?
I am. They've named the creative team as writer Stephen Niles and artist Marcelo Frusin. They're the creative team currently behind the Kick-Ass series. And if you're listening to this just wondering, wait, don't those two know each other? They do not.
Not in the comics.
Well, I mean, it depends on who you're talking about. Do Mindy McCready and Dave Lazuski know each other? Sure. But in the comics, there's been a new Kick-Ass for quite a while.
Right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and that is a woman, if I remember correctly, her name is Patience Lee. She's a former soldier and veteran who put on the Kick-Ass uniform, or at least a version of it, after thugs pretty much took over her home neighborhood after she returned, and she went to get some.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular Kick-Ass and Hit Girl do not know each other.
Ultimate team up? I think so.
I think it's going to eventually come into a classic team up.
I think it will eventually, but I'm not sure it will happen in this particular miniseries. I mean, these two characters meeting, it could be a war to end all wars, frankly. Because we all know that... I don't know the new Kick-Ass very well. I don't know very much about Patience other than she's very capable. However, Mindy McCready does not really have a stop button. I think we can agree to that.
Yeah.
So you might have to, like, chill her out a bit to have the, hey, let's team up, not try to beat each other.
I wouldn't be surprised if this didn't end in a team up. It just kind of ended in two people bloody staring at each other, leaning up against a wall going, "You're not bad at this."
Like, all right, respect.
Yeah.
Fist bump, walk away. Limp away.
Oh, and I was right. The new Kick-Ass is named Patience Lee. She's a veteran from Afghanistan who found herself neck-deep in debt, donned the Kick-Ass costume so she could steal from gangsters in her neighborhood to pay her debts.
Nice.
Oh, okay. So that's where the conflict's going to come.
I'm starting to think I need to back up and read that. That sounds way more interesting than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Last up in general comic news, there's going to be a new Crow series.
Really?
Yeah, it's called The Crow Lethe, Lethe. It's being done by Tim Seeley, Ilias Kirsas, Christina May Howe, and Samuel Murray. It's available right now from IDW Publishing. The character's name is Null Narcos. He's the newest performer in the Freak Chic Circus sideshow. The ringleader is somebody named Lady Combustible, the Mistress of Flame. And Null Narcos does not feel physical pain, so he's okay with being pierced in front of a live audience. Mm-hmm. Then he can cover the wounds in duct tape and keep going on with his day. But it's not necessarily because he's just super durable. He actually has no memory of who he is, aside from a few glimpses in his memories at a woman who could be his mother. Apparently, Null is already a Crow entity by the time he's introduced to readers. He starts to unravel some more memories when the ringleader, Lady Combustible, is murdered by a figure hell-bent on hunting Null himself down. It's going to be a 3-issue miniseries. It's touted as being very gory and explosive. Apparently, Null has photos of missing men pinned all over his trailer, and he wonders if he could be any of them. This sounds very deep.
A little bit existential.
Yeah.
He literally has to find himself.
Seems like it. Lady Combustible even introduces Null Narcos to an audience through the story of Sisyphus, who tricked Thanatos into putting on his own chains by asking for a demonstration of how they worked. This could be really different. I mean, a lot of the Crow comics and characters in the past, they've been very gothic, very deep, but they haven't had a whole lot of mythology behind them other than the freakish powers that seem to create them. With a name like Lethe as a subtitle, this Crow series sounds like it's going to have a lot of inferences, at least to Greek mythology.
I thought it was pronounced Lethe, Lethe. Lethe?
I could be completely wrong with that. I'm just spelling it out or sounding it out as it's spelled here.
Potato. It's still a river whose waters create forgetfulness. They cause you to forget if you drink the waters of the river Lethe. It's one of 3 rivers in the underworld. Greek myths for the win.
Nerd.
Anthropology was my major, so I think you mean scholar.
Nerd, scholar.
Same diff. Okay. Ravenclaw.
You're on a podcast about comic books. You think I'm actually saying that with any deference?
Do you think I actually care?
The subject of this week is War of the Realms, the Punisher miniseries. It was written by Jerry Dugan with art by Marcelo Ferreira. The inker is Roberto Poggi. The color artist is Rochelle Rosenberg, and the letters are by Feces Corey Pettit. And this was just kind of an off-the-cuff lark that I suggested last week. And it turned out to be surprisingly short. It's like 3.5 issues. It is a tie-in to the War of the Realms series. It talks specifically about what Frank Castle did during the event. And I don't know. I was surprised how fast this was.
Yeah, me too. And I was surprised how much complaining he did.
That's kind of a constant.
Yeah, but usually he doesn't sit there griping as much.
I find he's always griping. I think he's always griping about something. He's just very stone-faced about when he does it, so it doesn't sound like griping.
Oh, this was definitely griping.
I mean, it was very clear in the early exposition bubbles there that he is not a fan of Avengers. He thinks
pretty sure they're not a fan of him.
Oh, I'm quite positive of that. But I mean, the way he makes it sound is just Cape's always getting into trouble, and it's always the people who are left in the middle, which he's not entirely wrong about. But this is one of those extreme situations where things are just out of their control in general. I mean, I wasn't sure from the first issue. I thought this was going to be a comedy. I mean, when the whole thing starts out in a music store in Manhattan where a kid's taking piano lessons, teachers talking to him very diligently about how to do stuff, Castle kicks the door in, and, the music teacher whirls around, immediately recognizes him, and just says, "Oh, God, I brought back a little weed from Colorado. It's legal there, but I should have known something like this would happen. I know I screwed up. I'm here for piano wire."
And then this nerd, "What kind of piano do you have?"
Oh,
and
yeah,
then
sure.
A moment silence. He's like, "Oh, right." Piano wire. Right.
To be fair, though, I think he's still just trying to avoid being killed, even though he still doesn't know he's the target. I mean, when Frank Castle asked for piano wire, he just immediately went to salesman mode and said, "Okay, sure, what type of piano do you have?"
Mm-hmm.
"Okay, it's on the house." And, I mean, even when Castle leaves, he's still relatively concerned for normal people. Barricade yourself somewhere safe. Don't come out until the screaming stops.
Good advice.
It is, but there was something funny about the piano teacher leaning into the window saying, "What's happening now?" And it just occurred to me, that's right, this is New York in Marvel Comics. It could be just about anything.
Yeah, what now?
Castle sets up the piano wire as a trap for some night elves riding giant Dobermans.
Hellhounds?
Yeah, I would say Hellhound's more apt.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hilarious that you have people who very evidently came to invade New York, yet somehow they were not prepared for a half-insane man with a pair of submachine guns.
Yeah, and hand grenades and flamethrowers and Bowie knives.
They think so lowly of Midgard.
Yeah, and then he was attacked by that frost giant, Cassicla, the one who kept talking about himself like he was the Rock.
Yeah, in the third person.
Mm-hmm. But, unfortunately, in the middle of it, a small sedan got in between them that had a family of three, and Cassicla picked it up and tried to hurl it like a fastball at Frank Castle.
Yeah, that was sad.
Yeah, who was fast enough to get out of the way, and then Cassicla just decided to walk, and while Castle was getting up, the small part of humanity in Castle kicked in, and he went to check the car. The father, the driver, was still alive, but unfortunately the wife and child were already dead inside.
Yeah.
And he got the father out, man with a shattered leg. And he carried him like a soldier all the way to the local hospital, which was already on fire. And the people in it were evacuating to New Jersey, which Castle is already very well aware of is not a safe place, but as the lead physician points out, it's better than where they are.
True.
Yeah, she's right. She's absolutely right. But I mean, the streets are jammed up. The scene switches to a prison transport, a bus full of prisoners. And while the guards are talking about where to go next, the driver takes a ballista to the head. And I mean that quite literally. That arrow was huge.
Getting Firefly flashbacks here.
Yeah. And
hey, leave Wash out of this.
We can't. He's already stuck here.
Out.
But the bus is being attacked by a flame demon, and I gotta admit, Castle's response to it, while appropriate, I wouldn't have thought to attack something on fire with an explosive. It just wouldn't have occurred to me.
I thought about that too. I was like, wait, some of these creatures are of fire, and how can he land a solid hit or, trip them, etc.? Why would something explosive hurt something of fire? To me, that would be counterintuitive. Like, I'd go to a fire hydrant, pop that sucker open, and fire and water.
Most explosions is concussive force, not fire.
The thing is, though, Castle was right in this case because these Suderheim, Niflheim, Muspelheim, sorry, these Muspelheim demons are very physical. They just have something within them that combusts frequently. So these demons aren't made of fire. They just create a lot of it. And he took his shot and he got it. He boarded the bus, and I love the the prisoner's reaction as someone's getting on the bus. "Oh, we're saved!" They immediately see the skull sign. "Oh, hell no!"
Oh, swizzle sticks.
Hey, if they know anything about the situation of superheroics, or more specifically, vigilantes in New York, they're smart guys.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But Castle won't even let the lone officer on board even attempt to talk him out of whatever he may be doing. Castle immediately stun guns him and tells the prisoners they all work for him in this moment. Including a man named Ennio Ferrante, who apparently was on Castle's list already for some organized mob activities, and he was very, very compelled to just immediately shoot the man and work with the others.
Yeah, like, no, you're not a team player. Anybody else?
But he drops a bag of melee weapons he's been apparently picking up on the road, and tells them that they're going to help him escort a bunch of sick people through the tunnel to Jersey, and just that's it. He doesn't offer them anything by way of promise. He just tells them, I'm your new warden now. And I almost had to laugh when that guy pops up at the back of the bus and just yells, rush him!
Silence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not exactly. Castle holds his gun on him just as anyone else, and then all the prisoners look among each other like, seriously?
No.
Like, oh, that was a bad answer, huh?
Yeah. And then the guy suddenly asks for Castle to wait just before Castle shoots him anyway. You want him to wait now. Oh, boy.
Too late, bro.
Yeah. And, the doctor leads her patients into the edge of the Jersey Tunnel when they're suddenly attacked by flying things and night elves, which are almost immediately cut down by Castle's warriors. And seeing that image of prisoners, breaking good for a few minutes, it was one of those things where in the moment I was thinking, good, these guys are doing something with their lives. Then you see Frank Castle stay in the middle of them, and it's like they have a choice. Yeah.
Cannon fodder is one thing that we, I noticed a lot of them don't have names. Yeah, they're basically red shirts.
It's not just
They're
that.
shields.
When you break into the second part of the story, it's very evident that Castle has little regard for any of them. One of them, at the very beginning of the second issue, is being torn apart by a tunnel troll, and nobody even makes a move to cover or save him.
Oh no, he's expecting all of them to die. They're just a buffer between him and them.
No, but I mean, a secondary prisoner sees Castle just watching and eggs him on to just shoot the troll, to which Castle just shoots that guy who's questioning him. Castle has very little regard for any of them. He shoots a troll in the eyes for some reason.
What else are you supposed to do with a troll?
I don't know, but I mean, there is the point made that Castle's right about, though. He only has a limited amount of ammunition in this situation, and he has to save it, because not only are there scary things in front of him, but he's leading a bunch of scary people who would very honestly betray him in a moment's notice.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, when the counterattack comes, I mean, Castle rushes headlong into it after leaving a grenade in the blind troll's ear. I mean, jeez, man.
Yeah, that's something that, he's efficient.
Yeah.
Brutally efficient.
Yeah, I mean, he allows these guys to pick up enough scrounged food on the way to eat, but he makes it pretty clear also that they have to leave the bulk of it for the people bringing up the rear. The patients and the doctors. But, what's his name? Ferrante wants a deal from Castle. He wants some kind of guarantee that they do this, they're going to live. And Castle is not willing to have the conversation.
No.
Period.
Castle does not compromise.
No. I mean, they get into a fight with more Muspelheim demons further down the tunnel, and things go... I don't want to say poorly, because I don't know how many of them there are. Some of the prisoners are holding their own, but others are getting really easily cut down. The giant hellhounds are no help. The ones that can kind of eat a man in 2 bites.
Mm-hmm.
But as they're fighting, Castle's hit from behind by a battle axe, and Ferrante picks up Castle's gun and wants to renegotiate their deal. So in the third part, we find out that Ferrante wants Castle to swear on the souls of his dead family that they will live if they see these people through the tunnel.
Which I have mixed feelings about.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't anybody? There's just that moralistic question as to, can you do enough good to undo the evil you've done? And I don't know Ennio Ferrante from Ringo Starr, really, so I couldn't say what he's done in his lifetime. But Castle does eventually agree to the deal, although Ferrante seemingly keeps one of the pistols.
Well, Castle let him.
Oh yeah, Castle let him keep the pistol. But, yeah, Castle and the rest of the prisoners do what they're going to do. When they find that archer troll, apparently a scout to another force at the other end of the tunnel, Castle puts bullets into each of his shoulders so he can't draw his bow anymore. And then when this troll tries to act tough, Castle keeps hitting him in the face with the submachine gun, breaking all of his teeth. And then, once he's busted all of his teeth, then he points the gun again and just says, answer.
Yeah, again, brutally effective.
Yeah, I mean, Castle moves firmly from sociopath right into psychopath in the middle of all this.
He's a kind of very good, very professional.
Yeah, but when when that Troll Brigade starts coming down the tunnel, one of the other prisoners actually betrays Ferrante, hits him in the back of the head so he can get the pistol. But Castle sees him first and shoots that man before he can draw on him. And I almost felt bad for the next guy because Castle points his gun defensively at the next guy with a broadsword and just says, "Hey, I'm on board with the plan." He immediately takes an arrow to the neck.
Yeah, about time. A little too late.
Yeah, but Ferrante and Castle work together to start a fire in the gas tank of a semi-truck and drive that truck into the forces. And a bunch of fire demons come out the Jersey side of the tunnel just screaming incoherently. And I love their leader who looks at all this carnage and just goes, there's a bridge to the city in the north. Let us make sure that point of egress is held. It's like, we're retreating, but we're not retreating. He doesn't want to deal with whatever's coming down that tunnel. And by the time they come out the other side, it's just Castle and Ferrante leading everybody out of the tunnel. And the lead physician is very grateful, as she ought to be. She shakes both Castle and Ferrante's hands, gives them big thanks. And, Castle is explaining to Ferrante what he saw, the family that was crushed at the very beginning of his little adventure here, as he's digging through a police car so he can rearm himself. And Ferrante asks Castle that's all well and good, but what do you want me to do next? And he doesn't get an answer before Castle shoots him in the back.
Yeah, I have problems with that because I know he's not this knight in shining armor. He has no qualms about killing people like Batman, but he swore on his family's soul, and I feel like that's not something he would take lightly.
You would think so, except the doctor returned with some sandwiches for Ferrante and Castle as the thanks. She found Ferrante, not moving and tried her best to save his life. But, and the doctor overheard the promise on Frank's family souls. But as Frank explains to her, he doesn't believe in souls. He said in the bubble there, "You ever patch up a soul, Doc? You ever order a soul transfusion? Don't shovel that at me. I needed him compliant until I got you people out of the darkness."
He's a man without any faith.
Pretty much. He's I'd like to say pragmatist, but that's not the word for it. He's a nihilist.
I would think that faith and profaning your family's souls would be a little different.
Oh, that would be something to a person that believes in some sort of afterlife. Frank doesn't. Which is really weird, considering in Marvel you have literal angels and demons running around the world. But
try to be agnostic
or
atheistic then.
But that's just not the way he rolls. I mean, I can tell you that I read a series a while ago where the Hood was trying to get rid of Frank Castle not by killing him, but by resurrecting his family. And he apparently was successful. The caskets that held the bodies of his family opened, and the people inside sat up and started to speak Castle's name and say "Daddy." But he was so freaked out by this idea, he took a flamethrower to the caskets, locked the door of the chamber, and then walked away. Because,
what the heck?
Well, the thing is, he was convinced that he already lost them, and there was no way anybody was ever going to be able to bring him back. So whatever was moving around down there just couldn't possibly be his family. For a guy who deals with so much unusual stuff, he seems to have this dissonance where he cannot understand the metaphysical.
And to each their own, but he needs to be a little more flexible in his life, I think. From what he's seen and experienced, he's just like this stone mountain that cannot be changed or moved.
Maybe
Which can
so.
be good in some situations, but when it comes to that kind of thing, don't you think he could maybe learn and observe from stuff around him?
It's arguable that maybe he can't, because when it comes to Marvel, he doesn't get involved in a whole lot of the stranger activities. He tends to stick to certain neighborhoods and what he can understand. The most unusual thing he's really done would be whatever minor involvements he's had in the periphery of Avengers adventures, other than possibly hunting down members of Hydra himself, which is still like a pseudo-scientific organization. I mean, you won't find him riding through the land of Vishanti with Doctor Strange. It's just not something he digs.
Yeah, they're complete opposites, really.
Yeah. So maybe he really can't just make that bridge in his mind. Maybe he hasn't seen enough of the Fantastic. I don't read enough Punisher comics, but I can tell you from what I've read of the synopses, his adventures are pretty much very normal compared to a lot of what happens. Maybe things would change if he actually got into, I don't know, an exchange program with the Defenders, but I can't see them actually picking up the phone.
They'd be like, yeah, I'm going to let that one go to voicemail.
Yeah. I mean, even though he's sitting here fighting demons, he's, as I said, he's a little bit crazy, so maybe what he kills he sees differently.
A little? Again, with the understatements.
I don't know how else to put it. He's speaking plain English. He has a purpose, which is more than I can say for some other characters that we've read and reviewed. He just very definitively refuses to acknowledge the supernatural.
Oh, he's saying, well, he might be the person. I can see it. It leads. It's dying. It's not supernatural. It's just some other creature.
Yeah. He's a very odd man. He has a very specific mission. I mean, he wants to help people, but he definitely doesn't see himself as people anymore. He's consumed by the mission.
And I think he's fully aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he says that ironically. I think he really believes that he is just some soulless thing now. Even if he used to believe in souls, he just doesn't have one, so he's not going to deal with the recriminations or the repercussions. He's just going to march forward. I don't know what else to say about him. I mean, he has a singular purpose. The only question is who's going to feel punishment next. I mean, you saw the epilogue at the end there, when he's still cleaning up what few forces remain from the Night Elves after the War of the Realms. People are looting a store because they're hungry, and instead of punishing them, he barbecues the remains of a frost giant so they can eat it.
Which, honestly, I don't know how edible that would be.
Nor do I. I don't know what... Maybe that's where coronavirus started. Okay.
No, it started in Florida. We've established that.
But, I mean, even when Thor appears in front of him with his goat that can cause his chariot to fly, he barely blinks. And he refuses the help of Thor and Asgardians in cleaning up New York just because, as he puts it, there are still killers on the loose. And he won't even have Thor's consolation. He just tells him, I got somewhere to be by sunrise, and keeps walking.
Yeah, he's kind of rude.
And at the end, we see he meets up with a man who he saved at the very beginning of his miniseries, who is burying his family. And in the epilogue, he leads him to a van that is full of kids who have been orphaned by the War of the Realms.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Punisher Kill Crew picks up, because the Punisher makes it his mission to find Cassicla, the frost giant who killed that man's family, as a way of getting something back for both this man and the orphans that were created by the War of the Realms.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just want to put up a note. You say Frank Castle's rude. He's been kicked out of Valhalla.
I'd kick him out of Valhalla too.
He's been kicked out of the night. He's been kicked out of Asgard too for the same reasons. No one wants to deal with him.
And I want to remind you that this is somebody we've seen in the future will be picked up by Galactus as a herald and turned into a Ghost Rider. I know, that terrifies me too.
Like a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the miniseries itself is actually better than I expected. It's almost like a self-contained action movie, really, or horror movie. It is really gut-wrenching on several respects, not just because of what happens to the prisoners who are doing the best they can in a terrible situation, but at the same time, they're also dealing with Frank Castle, who may be the worst thing in that tunnel for them to deal with.
Yeah, that's like following a badger into its burrow. You just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, except this badger went to fight other badgers. It was really interesting. I wish this was a 4-issue miniseries, simply because I was missing a little bit of emotional resonance when it came to a lot of the inmates, because, as Joanna said, most of them didn't really have identities of any real sort.
For Castle, they're just a means to an end.
Yeah.
Meat shield.
Yeah,
Yep.
And unfortunately I know they were meant that way for the story, but they were treated that way. They had no actual identities. You could pretty much just assign numbers to them. Other than that, it was it was curious because I've never actually read any Punisher series that I know of in my lifetime. So it was nice to see how he operates independent of other characters who he's used as moral centers. Like he'll follow Captain America. He will occasionally listen to Spider-Man or Daredevil. But when those characters aren't around, I've never seen how he works, and it's really chilling to see how Frank Castle sees the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and to him, he has no sense of nuance. It is just black and white. You're good or you're evil. You're either something that deserves to be punished by him, or you're not. There is no in between for him. It's bizarre. What do you guys think?
His unmoving mannerisms, yes, they're effective, but I feel that he is missing in part of the scope of everything. Like, there's no gray. There was only black or white.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, is really narrow-minded and dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we're talking about a trained man with an arsenal.
He is the army.
I think he's more like a black site. Things meet
Black
him and then they
Ops?
disappear forever, never to be seen again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jesse, how about you?
I actually remember reading this before, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I think we did it for a different show.
I'm positive I've never read this before. I've read individual issues as War of the Realms was coming out, but I've never read this.
I'm positive I've read this before somewhere.
You must have done it on your own, because I know I didn't.
I don't do anything on my own.
I'm not going to ask about your bathroom habits now.
Anyways, no, it's just I read through this and it's like, again, it is a interesting thing. I don't know. I can't say much about this as this feels like outside of it being Frank Castle, kind of a basic point A to point B story with Castle just being, in D&D terms, a lawful evil bastard.
Well, this did make
I
me...
don't know. I think he's like more of a chaotic.
No, he's got set guidelines that he will not break. There's a reason why he tased the
fair.
officer and did not kill him.
That's fair. I'll give you that.
You know,
I concede my point.
It does make me curious to read Punisher Kill Crew now, the follow-up miniseries to this.
I'm actually kind of curious about that, only for the eclectic ensemble.
Well, not just the ensemble, but with Frank Castle seemingly unable to parse anything beyond the physical world, I kind of want to know how he reacts to tripping around the 10 realms and just trying to find the frost giant he's looking for. Because
what's
I was going to say, when that guy retreated, he didn't go to Connecticut. He went back to Jotunheim.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Jesse, you were saying?
I was going to say it was also interesting to see him interact with some people who definitely do have moral centers. I know at least 2 people in that crew actually have a conscience in there.
Well, one of the things that we figured out from different discussions is that the difference between a superhero and a supervillain really is public acceptance. If the public accepts what you do, you're a superhero. If they defy what you do, you're a villain. And Castle falls somehow very close to the middle of that. People love the fact that he's defending them from very dark elements of society, but they hate how he does it.
Because he's brutal and unwavering, and that's terrifying to some people.
And more than a bit judgmental. I mean, it's like at the very beginning of all this, that poor piano teacher freaked out thinking that Castle came to kill him over a dime bag of weed. So it tells you that at the very least, the idea of Frank Castle's morality is absolute. When you do wrong, that's it. You're wrong. And when you're wrong, you're a dead man in his eyes. That's how they see him.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it even more terrifying because you never really know. That means when you meet him, you never really know which Castle you're going to get as a day-to-day citizen. Spider-Man, I'm sure he knows what he's going to get from Frank Castle, not just because he's met the sociopath before, but Spider-Man does not do wrong. Daredevil has accents but does not do wrong. Captain America never does wrong. That's kind of his thing. But when you're a day-to-day person, you don't know when you're meeting Frank Castle if he's going to save you, if he's looking for somebody over your shoulder, or if he knows that one time you stole cable.
Or jaywalked.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
cheated on a spelling test. Like,
that's the scary question, because it's very clear now that nobody is entirely sure from a personal standpoint what's going to set him off.
Mm-hmm.
I think the public, doesn't know, but I think he does have a threshold of bad that he just curtails to.
I'm sure they do, but again, apparently it is hazy enough in the public's eye that one guy thinks smoking a joint's enough to do it.
Mm.
If that's the worst thing the guy ever did, then he's lucky.
Imagine what would happen if he didn't hand him that piano wire he asked for.
I don't think he would ever even consider not handing it over.
No, I was just more worried he might have forgotten in that moment because he's staring down at he's staring up at the guy he thinks is there to kill him, so who knows. Do you have anything that's on tap for next week?
Oh, goodness. Frankly, I am behind on a lot of reading, and I have piles of things that are in covers that I haven't even touched yet. Most of which are either Wonder Woman or Valkyrie, which we've already touched on.
Mm-hmm. Well,
no.
I got a suggestion. I want to see if lightning strikes twice.
I'm not reading Batman.
I wasn't asking you to. The thing is, though, is that we seem to, as a group, really enjoy the first part of the Naomi miniseries.
Mm-hmm.
By the same imprint, there was another series that came out. I don't know if it was supposed to be an ongoing or a maxi series, but Wonder Imprint over at DC Comics put out a new series of the Wonder Twins. Zan and Jaina, the weird characters that spun out of DC's animated properties from the 80s, became this thing in Wonder Comics, and I'd like to see if it's any good.
But have they aged well? Because I thought they were corny back in the day. I don't know how they translate.
You know what? That's a question in and of itself, and it all depends on how it's written. I mean, goodness knows, Shazam started out as corny back when he was first created in the 20s.
He's still corny.
Honest,
most start off or went through a corny phase thanks to Comic Code Authority.
Wonder Friends.
There is no way to find out unless we actually sit down and read some issues of Wonder Twins. I mean,
all right, I'm game.
Let me put it to you this way: the series has to be a level of self-aware, because from what I understand, the central thrust of the series is that the Wonder Twins are the Justice League's latest interns.
Oh no! So they're like.
They're basically the people that are sitting there answering the phones, dealing with people that come in for tours, occasionally pointing the right direction to heroes who may have lost their way in the Hall of Justice, things like that.
Okay, well, given that framing, let's check it out.
All right. So next week it'll be the first few issues of the Wonder Twins over at DC Comics. Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, and I hope you found out a lot about Frank Castle. I know I did in 3 issues. Thanks again. Have a great one. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
And I am Jesse.
The Cosmic Library is now closed.
This podcast is part of the Second Union Podcast Network. You can listen, like, and subscribe to all our podcasts by heading over to wearesecondunion.com. Thank you for listening.